Hey guys, so today I have for you in 3.22 Ancestor League a Glacial Hammer Frost Breath Heat Shiver Yoke of Suffering, basically an all unique item build that I wanted to showcase. The idea is it is built for Sanctums and Ancestor specifically. Does not have a high HP pool. Basically is very geared towards Forbidden Sanctum, which, if you don't know, is a separate area, which you get to by going to the map, clicking Travel to Forbidden Sanctum, and taking one of these tomes, which drop as of this patch, as opposed to Sanctum League, where you collected Sanctums in the maps themselves. Now that it's not core, you sort of place the tome in here. Relics are tradable, and you can open your Sanctum this way. And basically, Sanctum requires very, very specific builds. You notice most of these mods here are monsters take increased damage. Monsters, see how this one says bosses and this one says guards, take increased damage. Monsters are both of those. So Candlestick, and I think Papyrus relics, and the one that looks like a chest, I forget the name of it, can roll monsters take increased damage. But as you can see, due to the Tetris-like nature, you can only fit certain relics in certain areas. So this is my current setup, yeah. So what I want to do today, I guess, is to. This is my first video, so I want to showcase the build, but the way I want to do it is just to run a variety of content. I was thinking maps, Sanctum, and Ancestor itself to showcase how it works. But the gist of it I'll explain using a mix of in-game and POV here. So hopefully I'm sharing my POV, but I'm gonna assume I'm not. Again, first video, but I've been making builds for a long time. I made actually a build of the week video that Chris narrated back in the day. I've been playing a long time, since 2013. I've also made builds that impacted the way GGG patched their game. So if you recall, before the Atlas, or just after its introduction, when Shaper was introduced, most bosses in the game had cannot be frozen on them. Basically, that was patched to bosses cannot be slowed because of me, and a build I made where I was perma freezing Shaper. So yeah. I have a lot of experience making builds. I like to make builds that are different. So specifically this one uses 10 different uniques. And I'll just go through them. So Frost Breath, the unique mod on it that's most important is attacks with this weapon deal double damage to chilled enemies. With the introduction of this league, and two things, tattoos, where you can roll things like flat damage, make that mod where you do double damage to chilled enemies. Enemies are basically always chilled with Glacial Hammer, which is the main skill, because of increased effect of chill on enemies, and also every third strike freezes enemies, although dealing 390% or 4.9x more damage, which is just everything gets frozen, which makes it very safe for Sanctum, very safe for Ancestor. And even though this build isn't designed for maps specifically, when I run a map here, you'll see it's very safe. And again, all this gear, with the exception of the Sync Link Brass Dome, was well under 1 Divine, 1 Chaos to 1 Divine. So the Brass Dome, I think, is 4. That is mainly because it's 6 Link, which is about 2 to 3 Divine itself to 6 Link, and then the roll of 5% to all maximum resistances is key. And the other thing I mentioned, other than the tattoos, oh yeah, so the important tattoos, which are really cool, are melee strike range. So Glacial Hammer doesn't normally have a high melee strike range, but when you stack up melee strike range, and you can see I'm stacking plus 3 here, +2 with weapon artistry, the mastery, attack mastery gives some melee strike range, and this node here with Tribal Fury, I believe, where it says melee strike skills deal splash damage to surrounding targets. That melee strike range actually increases that splash radius, and also nodes where you see like melee skills have increased area of effect. I don't specifically have this one, but that actually applies to melee splash support gem itself, which we don't use. So it also applies to Tribal Fury. So the more AoE you have, the more splash radius Tribal Fury does. So it doesn't specifically say that on the notable, but that's something to keep in mind. Onslaught comes from Lead by Example and Warning Call. That is the only cluster jewel I'm using on this build. Warning Call is, I keep saying the second thing I should get to, but the big thing that was released this league is Anomalous Support gem. So supported skills have 11 to 24 added attack physical damage per trauma. Trauma stacks when you hit the enemy for each hit on the enemy. So for each hit on the enemy, you're getting 11 to 24 added flat physical damage, and you're taking 146 damage per trauma from supported skills. Lasts about 7 seconds, so if you're attacking 10 times per second, oh, that's 70 traumas you could get going, which would be massive reflect damage, which is why we use things like Brass Dome to mitigate physical. I think a Minor Pantheon, physical damage for each hit you take recently. Each time you take 146 damage per trauma, that counts as a hit, so that's always at 5%. The big one is inexorable, so 25% chance to gain an endurance charge when you're hit, 50% when you're stationary. When you're swinging Glacial Hammer, you're always stationary, so you'll always be at max endurance charges, which is 4% physical mitigation per endurance charge. And then finally, the biggest one is we're taking advantage of the Forbidden Flesh and Flame jewels, which drop from Eater of Worlds and Searing Exarch, respectively. And those are the other jewels we are using. So Untiring, and what Untiring does is it is a Juggernaut node where 1.5% of physical damage you mitigate in the past 10 seconds is stacking, regenerated as life, and another 40% increased life regeneration rate on top of that. So for the example of the Anomalous Trauma Support, if you're taking 70, right, times 150, so 1,000, 10,000, 1,050, no, 10,500 physical damage per hit. Obviously, you got to mitigate a lot of that because we only have a 3k life pool. So yeah, but as you're mitigating that through armor and also Anomalous Trauma Support, you see the second line there where it says 10% chance to not take damage. When you gain trauma from supported skills, that actually is mitigated. So that actually applies to the Untiring life regeneration itself. So as you see when you play the build, you're kind of regenerating life. Southbound Gloves, because 100% increased freeze duration and a lot of flat damage. And as you can see, flat damage, flat damage, flat damage. That's kind of the narrative I'm going for here when you're using a weapon that deals double damage to chilled enemies. So the more flat damage you have, the better. The implicit is attack speed, because more flat damage and more attack speed, those things work really well together. So what you're focusing on the tree is a lot of increased damage, as you can see, and elemental penetration. So increased damage, increased damage, increased damage. This one actually is physical added as extra cold damage, which is effectively a better increased damage. Yeah, so the other good interaction is you see we have 0 to 70 range here. So almost 90% of Berserkers on PoE Ninja use the shield. it gives your war cries infinite power. The war cry we're using is an ancestral cry, which also gives more melee strike range. I think I have a total of 40 melee strike range, so it's a glacial hammer is hitting from almost 20 units away. Sorry, 20 to 40 units away, so it's hitting very far, which you'll see is very good for Sanctum, where the enemies aren't always grouped together. Heat Shiver, which takes 100% of your cold damage and adds it as extra fire damage against frozen enemies. Enemies are always frozen, and if they're frozen, they're always chilled, so that's 130% cold as extra fire. Heat Shiver is a top 10 unique on PoE Ninja builds, so it's very clear why when it's adding 130% of your damage, effectively more than doubling your damage as the majority is cold. Trinity, because we have Yoke of Suffering, our elemental damage is also shocking, so Trinity support, when we're hitting sometimes highest with fire, sometimes highest with cold, you're gaining the other two types, so yeah, you were always full on Trinity in terms of resonance. Ruthless, I think that got changed this league to make it so it's just something to note. Not that we're doing damage over time, but it used to say more damage with bleeding caused by melee hits, but now it's more damage with ailments caused by melee hits, although this build doesn't. I guess for Ignite, that's a small bonus there. But the main thing with Ruthless is every third hit, it does 98% more melee damage, which means bigger shocks, bigger freezes, bigger chills, which is what this build is all about. Scorch from the boots, so lower enemy resistances. Speaking of lower enemy resistances, the Cold Mastery, that's where we get our exposure, which will lower enemies' cold resistances even further. And then finally, that noise you're hearing in the background is my Harbinger. And what he does with the Greater Harbinger of Time is every couple of seconds he basically casts Tailwind on you, so you have increased action speed. I forget what the exact value is, but I feel like it's 10%. I'd have to check on that. But yeah, so that's basically it for the build. I'll start off with the map first, because this basically, it's a go fast build for mapping, and you're relying on enemies getting frozen, and you can only kill frozen enemies, so you'll see that enemies need to be frozen. So I guess I'll run a more monster-like map one first. And I forgot to mention, sorry, before, Red Blade Banner, where war cries have infinite power. So when I war cry, because the Berserker has Warbringer, you gain 10 rage per 5 power if you have less than 25 rage. So you see we have 20 here. So when we cast the war cry, it jumps up to 70. That allows us to trigger Berserk support gem, which consumes rage per second to use. But if you can see it doesn't infinitely sustain, but we can have Berserk up quite a bit, so it's something that will have to be refreshed as we run through the map. But yeah, I'll just do a quick mapping showcase here of the build. Again, this is a budget under a 10 Divine build, so very cheap to put together. All uniques, so simple. Taste of Hate is probably the most expensive flask, but you can get a cheap roll for about 20 chaos, I would say, so nothing too expensive. And then we're just using a Basalt and a Granite Flask. Granite Flask Lionized Roar, because the 10% more melee physical. Most of our damage comes from Anomalous Trauma, which is added flat physical. And then Basalt, because we need as much armor as we can. You'll see when I get to the Metamorphs, what I've been trying out is Metamorph on the Atlas tree. And things like, a Rogue Metamorph. Metamorphs have 150% more life times the 43% increased monster life we have in this, so this will be a good barometer of if we freeze these Metamorphs. Normally Metamorphs most people don't take in maps because they are extremely deadly, but this shows you how a 3k life build can be somewhat safe in that regard, so hopefully I don't die. Oh, and I use Shield Charge for maps and Leap Slam for Sanctums, so let's give this a try. So top right, it's basically a ton of damage. Ton of movement speed too. It's almost kind of hard to control. But you get used to it. Just kind of runs through pop monsters. Yeah, sometimes you'll miss it. Oh, this is a rogue. Okay, so this is a rogue metamorph. So you'll see I'm going to start to hurt myself here because I'm going to be doing too much damage. So you see my life going back and up, and I only had about 20 trauma stacks there. Once you get to 30, 40, you might have to stop attacking quickly because you're doing so much damage. So that's good on bosses like Cyrus and things where you just start doing so much damage. The last phase with Cyrus just starts melting. But it melts while your flasks are up, so yeah, you can expect to die with this build during mapping, but like, again, it's a what am I trying to say? It's a build more geared towards Sanctums, which I'll show after. I just want to prove that this map can be done using the build. Oh, and the other cool thing this league really profitable is Expedition. Expedition on the Atlas tree got a new keystone where you can only have one explosive, but it gets a ton of radius and placement. So you just kind of place it in the middle, hover your mouse down to the right. I can see that monsters are immune to physical and chaos, which would limit a lot of builds, but Glacial Hammer converts 100% of cold damage, physical damage to cold damage, so makes it doable. But this is where I'd be most likely to die. But with the Ancestral Call, we should be hitting more than one enemy at a time. Yeah, so Exerted strikes target 2 additional enemies. And actually, I don't have a regret orb, but normally I use the +3 attack range for Sanctum. But there's one below it, which is non-Veil strike skills target 1 additional enemy. So every time you hit, if Ancestral Call and that mastery is up, you're really hitting 4 enemies. So you're hitting enemies all over the place, which makes it somewhat safe. Okay, let's try this. So I kind of just want to freeze them because if you get hit, you're gonna die. So yeah, that just is what it is when it comes to this build for mapping. It's safe until it's not. So I would recommend. You'll see in Sanctum it's a lot more usable. But I just want to show a map to show that it can be done. Okay, let's do the bosses here, and then we'll do Metamorph. Okay. I think he's getting frozen. Yeah, he should. He's just casting Lightning Storm. You can see my health is going all over the place. But that was due to trauma hurting me, not the monster. Okay, now let's get to the main part of the build, or what the build's used for, which is Sanctum. So I'm going to do a quick Sanctum run so you can see what it looks like. I pretty much have a 95% success rate on Sanctum, so this is a very safe build for that. So I guess I'll just walk through what I'd go for. Yeah, so for this one, losing 30 Oris, all of these afflictions are pretty bad, but it is what it is. So the good thing about this build is it really freezes the monsters, so there's nothing really dangerous until you get to traps. saw that the monsters were very separated there, so having the monsters having the extra melee strike range that this build has is really, really useful. Oh, and the good thing about Sanctum is it gives a lot of experience this league, so most of that 65% has come just from Sanctum, from level 95 to 96. I think that was about 8 Sanctums to get that kind of experience, so only about, 8% per Sanctum, so that's pretty good. You can see Glacial Hammer striking from like a mile away. And I'll do a test in the next room to check how long they're frozen for, just so you can get an idea. That guy's pretty frozen. As you can see, it's very safe. Until they unfreeze. Yeah, and make sure you always collect all the coins you can, because monsters have 20 reduced action speed, which has normally been very helpful. But totally doable without it. Oh, the other thing is Resolve Aegis. What's new this league is Resolve Avoid, Resolve Mitigation, and Resolve Aegis. Aegis is based on your energy shield. It's for energy shield based characters, but because we only have 31 energy shield, you can totally take this and it's not a real downside at all. Okay, so this one is a find the exit. Each one has a different type of modifier to it. The thing they changed with this league with Sanctum is you don't know where the exit is. So in the Abandoned Library, there's 3 possible exits. One in the top left, one in the top right, and one in the bottom right. In that case, it was in the top left. Sorry, I'm not giving a lot of commentary right now. It's just get kind of focused when I'm doing Sanctums. Okay, now you'll see the boss damage.
Berserker, slay them!
Yeah, it just ramps up. I think that was only 18 trauma stacks, but like 30 is just another, it's at least another 20% more damage, if not more. Yeah, so you can now, in this patch, take the Sanctum or keep running it. I would just keep running it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for a quick Sanctum showcase. And Sanctum is by far one of the most profitable mechanics to run. I've only been running it for 3 days, maybe and when I say 3 days, I'm not a streamer, so I'm maybe running it 2 hours a day, 7 hours total, and yeah, it's in the range of about 6 to 7 divines per hour. It is crazy. I think I have a screenshot from one where I had 7 divines. Raw divines and another two divines in extra currency, and the run took 20 minutes. So very, very profitable. I'll do a quick Ancestor before
I'll sing of you.
end the video, and I'll just go over the rest of the gems. So Molten Shell, Life Tap, cast when damage taken, Precision, Life Tap, Blood Rage, Berserk. Oh yeah, Precision, you can level it up a little more. You want it with Precise Technique, you have 40% more attack damage if accuracy rating is higher than maximum life, but never deal critical strikes. But that's fine because this weapon has a base critical strike of 5% chance, so it's more efficient to not go critical strikes. I think my accuracy rating is 3212 and my life is 3153. You can use Abyss Jewels to kind of get the accuracy rating exactly what you need and fine tune it. I had to take one global accuracy rating node there, I think one tattoo there. So you kind of get the idea. You kind of, the great thing about tattoos this league is it really helps you fine tune your build easily. So I have the exact requirements: 177 strength. I have 178 strength. Basically, anywhere you can put tattoos, use them. They're highly, highly efficient and much better than the small +10 benefits, where you either get 1 mana, 1% energy shield, 2 accuracy, 1% evasion, 1 life, 1% melee physical damage per 5 strength. And yeah, we'll do a quick Ancestor tournament too, just so you can see what that looks like. I think I will switch to the target one additional enemy here instead of the +3 melee strike range. Oops, wrong skill.
The newcomer brings a smaller warband to the field. An interesting strategy. Challenging them shall be... Ready your weapons! Attack!
So as you can see, the bosses are frozen. So my strategy for Ancestor has been to kind of just... That's it. Like, get my flankers going, and then drop the totem, wait for Tom to respawn, and then once he respawns, just, well, he's not going to respawn there, but keep him frozen while the flankers, which are this totem, this totem, this totem, and this totem, take the enemy base. I'm not very high rank, so this might not be the best showcase, but at least at the rank I'm currently at, it is freezing the bosses. So we'll do one more here. Sure.
A master of strength. Prepare yourselves. Begin.
I always get nervous when they say something because it means they're winding up a big attack, but I forget they're frozen. So, yeah. Okay. So she'll respawn, and as soon as she respawns, like just freeze them before they get their attacks off, because there's a certain point where Ancestor just becomes a one-shot mechanic, and like they will, like it doesn't matter what your build is, they'll be one-shotting.
Our mortal challenger wins.
Okay, so there it is, guys. That's the 3.22 Glacial Hammer Berserker with the newly added trauma support and tattoos. Looking forward to any suggestions you may have on how I can improve, and hopefully this build video style was... I'll work on it for the future, but I just wanted to showcase today just some raw playing footage so you can see what it's really like to play the build with not hiding anything or making anything seem like it's better than it is. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you.